Hey y'all, and welcome to another exciting episode of Coach's Corner. As with me as always is my co-host Mike Lamb from Focal Point Business Coaching of Utah, and I'm still Adam Gahabe of Focal Point Business Coaching of Cary. Sometimes it's you forget even what your business's name, so all good. Mike, how are we doing today?
Doing good.
Yeah.
Weather's getting warmer around here in Utah and
Hmm.
get kind of excited for that. And, business coaching's been fun lately. So
Business coaching is fun every day, but it is
really,
nicer when you're not having to bundle up and everything to go trek out. So awesome, awesome. So two things I wanted to kind of touch base on today. Uh, been having a lot of talks with people about hiring and team building and structure and, as it relates to culture and just what to look for and how to do it correctly. And so I was like, you know what, Mike, I think that this is a good chance for us to talk about hiring, team building, the importance of getting the right people, the pitfalls that you fall into when you get it wrong, what it can do for that wonderful thing called culture that we kind of covered 2 episodes ago. So I think this is going to be a super fun conversation because I absolutely adore this topic. I think not enough people actually focus on it. So here is my big question to you. What is the most important aspect when you are deciding who to hire as it relates to building a singular unit or team that is high functioning? Go.
okay. Well, you just alluded to it a little bit. But
I
you know,
cheated.
we talked about culture a couple weeks ago, and what it really comes down to is, we can find people that on paper look like they have all the things, right? But we need to be looking for the number one thing we need to look for is attitude
Okay.
and their attitude towards doing their job and really just their overall attitude towards life. Um, and this is a coaching principle we get into a lot as
Hmm.
coaches is that success is not all due to skills and knowledge. On paper, those things look great.
Mm.
But it's that attitude is the highest, most important thing, attribute we need to be looking for when we're hiring somebody, bringing them in. Um, Cultural fit is part of that attitude as well. That, all kind of comes together.
Yeah. So you're basically referencing soft skills and, the ability to learn, the ability to adapt, the ability to blend in and, be part of something bigger. And I don't know about you and the industries that you've been in as of late, but I'll say over the last decade, when I was still heavily in software, I saw this massive shift away from anything soft skill related. You know, anything that was on a job rec or anything else was really focused on hard skills. Like I said, in the tech world, it was what languages did you know? What was your programming experience? What did you do for running projects? And what was your hard line deliverables, et cetera, et cetera. And, Mike, while I feel like all those hard skills are important in any industry, hard skills will only get you so far. I feel like there's a ceiling to where you can do and where you can go with a person that only has hard, tangible skills.
Yeah.
One of the biggest dangers that I feel like people have, especially when they're starting out small businesses, they have gotten to that point where they're willing to make that first leap and they're willing to hire that first or second person, but then they get it wrong. It's
Mhm.
the wrong personality. It's the wrong attitude. They don't have that same entrepreneurial spirit or that go get 'em type philosophy, and it ends up dragging people down. Well, guess what you've done then? You've just made yourself gun shy. And so when you go to do this again, you're very, is this something I want to do? Do I really want to grow? I can do this myself. And that just brings on all kinds of other problems around lack of delegation, and then you're overworking yourself, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need to go down that path. But do you experience this, similar things or?
Yeah, 100%. I've gone down in my previous career and hired people based on what, skills and knowledge and those type of things. And we didn't dive deep into attitude and personality and things like that. And it
Yep.
was the wrong hire. And guess what? That cost me when we made that wrong hire. We spent, on average, you spend about 60 to 90 days getting that person from the time that you put an ad out for the position to the time you get them hired and sign the paperwork. It's usually, I think the average is 65 days is what I've heard.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
that's 2 months of your time. It and then the cost of it is $15,000
Yep.
on average to hire a new employee. And so, man, if you have to go back and start that over again, then you're looking at 120 days time, you know,
If you're
and
lucky,
and well, that's 120 days if they quit on the day that you hire them.
right?
Really, you probably spend about 3 months before you realize that you've made the wrong hire. And man, that's really costly in a lot of ways. And it really has in most occasions, they have it on skills and knowledge, and it is the attitude and the cultural fit didn't mesh.
Yep.
And they weren't willing to learn and follow the cult not the culture, but the systems and processes and having a positive attitude that it's gonna work.
Hmm.
Even if they're coming in maybe as a sales rep and they have a harder market out the gate to start. And if they don't have that positive attitude, they're not going to get through that kind of slump that you go through once your honeymoon phase is over and you're starting to get going and having to dig and grind.
So I mean, it sounds like we're really scraping right around the edges of talking about Carnegie's Triangle here. But
Yeah.
before we actually dive in there, you know, one other thing that when you talk about the cost and the overhead of hiring, you don't think about this as much because you think about physical costs in terms of bringing someone new on. Um, but here's something that, is a constant real drag, especially if you get it wrong. It's either on your time, Mike, or your right hand's time, or your other leader's time to sit there, train, nurture, follow up, delegate, communicate, bring someone in and help try to nurture to get them to a point where they're actively engaged and a productive member of the overall team. What you what you don't realize if you get it wrong is what it does to the morale of all of those that are working there side by side with you. Because yes, while it's frustrating as the owner, as the decision maker, it's equally as frustrating for everyone else in that team. They know they're also starting over. And this is a great opportunity for me to slide something in there. If you don't have your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, well documented for onboarding, for training, for communication, who to access, who to go to, um, you're really doing yourself such a disservice. And I don't think that you're at that point where you should be bringing on someone new because man, getting those building blocks, those core competencies around how you want to operate and how you're going to bring someone on, how you're going to evaluate their success, what training are you going to give them? Are you going to do a 90-day review? Are you going to do a 30-day review? Are you going to do peer peer pair them with someone so that they understand the ropes, etc. All of these things are common sense to write down, but how many places do you walk into do not see these things documented?
Well, and that I see that being the pitfall too is that people hire on skills and knowledge, so they think they're not going to have to do as much
Ah,
with SOP and training. Hey, I'm just going to hire this guy. It's going to be plug and play. Well, that's not.
no
That's
one's plug
never.
and play. No one is, right?
Every
We,
business is different. How you do it, you could be doing, body work at one shop and go to another one, and everything's completely different there. They use different software, they use
yep,
different, maybe paint. I don't know, but that every position, it's not that simple. Skills and knowledge does not guarantee that they can do what you do at your company without, and I'm talking good SOPs, like down to the details of like
yep,
what buttons to click on the keyboard sometimes. Like, hey, word for word, and they may brush over it, they know it. But if it's there, it's there, and you know that they can fall back on that. And
awesome.
for me in my career, there's been times where I've had SOPs that have just made it so easy for me to come in and have
Point,
wins
click, and
and
go,
stuff.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. You get those wins early, and that's what you want
Yep.
to keep that attitude and things going in the right direction too.
Well,
Because if you hire somebody and they're struggling, that can bring them down, and then it's gonna start rippling all the way through, like you say.
so think about this. Not only does having these SOPs and having your onboarding processes documented help with getting that new person online, active, and being productive, but what it also does is it lets that new person understand that there is a certain level of structure underneath the organization. You're not shooting from the hip. There are plans in place. You've taken that time to document and build that structure so that everyone understands not only the order of operations, but the evaluation, the criteria that's going to be used, the communication channels. They don't feel like they're floundering and they're just, here, new person, go in this room. Here's a handbook. Come out and let me know if you have questions. I can't tell you what a bad taste that leaves in someone's mouth. So before we jump into the Carnegie Triangle stuff, because I do want to go there and kind of lay out what this principle means, because we've referenced it multiple times, let's kind of just do like our top five things that you should do in terms of onboarding, right? And let's just go back and forth. Number one, I'll go because I already said it. Have clearly documented SOPs for process, timeline, communication, and when that first follow-up is going to be. SOP document has to be in place in my mind day one before you bring on someone new. What else would you say is an absolute must?
Oh, now it's kind of opened up a little bit. You got the easy one done. You know that the next thing that I always like to do when I was hiring new people is have multiple individuals in the organization have a touch with them,
Okay.
and that's to help with cultural fit. If you have just not just your own opinion, if you're the one that's done the interviewing process, you need to get that from multiple people. And that way, like I
Ooh.
say, the touch or the culture you're more likely to bring out whether they're going to be a cultural fit.
Okay. Okay. So you jumped right into, okay, we just hired you. I'm gonna walk this back a step or maybe
Yeah,
two.
and this is before hiring. I would
Maybe
do this.
two. Exactly, because those are things we haven't really touched on. Um, so you have to have your SOPs on what you do when you do hire, right? But even before that, man, writing that rec, writing the requirement doc that clearly articulates the job roles, the expectations, the time frames, the skills needed versus the skills desired, and a really good description about the operational efficiency of the shop, right? The shop, the organization, doesn't matter what it is, right? But how are things functioning today? And one thing that I think is commonly overlooked, putting a high level structure in place of where that position would fall in terms of the line of command or anything of that ilk, I think is extremely important. If you don't have that clear rec and people don't understand where they're coming into and what their expectations should be, it's really easy for them to get the wrong idea or feel like there's been a bait and switch type situation. And once again, you're asking for trouble in doing that. So for me, you know, eh, it's SOP. It's an extremely clear requirement doc, and making sure that's disseminated all to your HR staff, whether you use, recruiters, whether you do it yourself. That's critical to the hiring process.
Mhm.
All right, what else do you got?
Um, I don't, you put me on the spot again.
I'm going to keep doing that too, so
you
be
know,
ready.
the results that we're expecting out of them, we need to make that clear as well.
Of course.
Which is kind of like the requirement doc, making sure they know that, hey, this is what the expectations are and the results that we're looking for from you. And if we're not
Sure.
clear on that, we unspoken expectations are a real problem.
Sure.
Um, and if we're not telling them, hey, you've been hired for this position and this is the expectation of results, and that way there's no pitfalls for them. If they don't make it, they already know they've missed,
Sure. Sure.
But and they know where they need to put in more effort. So just making that clear for them so that they can achieve, and then the win that comes from that when they achieve the results that
Perfect.
are required of them helps so much.
30, 60, 90-day plan for onboarding anyone new, what they're going to be doing, what the output is, and what that means for the next progression of how they're going to grow. I think that's absolutely, dead on. And, I love how you mentioned the multiple touch points. uh, Interaction with one person is never enough because you know why? You're going to get one person's view. And when you're truly building a team within an organization, you're going to have multiple viewpoints. And that leads me to where I think is next in importance. And this will give us directly a lead into Carnegie stuff. Understanding the existing dynamic of your employees is I can't even tell you how critical that is. Heck, that might be my number one. I think far too many people will look at a resume and look at all the skills and look at the background and man, this person's glowing and just fantastic. And look at all the awesome testimonials and references. But guess what? If they don't mesh with your existing team, if they don't communicate in a way that's in alignment with how you're operating, man, you can really blow that thing up. So, it may not be the obvious, but when you're looking to hire, I think you should take a step back and start by looking at who you have, what the personalities are, what are the strengths and weaknesses of those people you already have here, right? When you're building a team, you're trying to augment skills. You're trying to bring in skills that you don't have or bring in a period of redundancy that is needed around key bottleneck areas, right? So it's take stock in what you've got. Know the people, not just what they can do today, but have the thoughts and conversations about where you want these people, your existing people, to be in a year, 2 years, 3 years. Hire for vacuums and voids, right? Where you are missing. And so, for me, it's the reflection on where you are, where you want to be, and then where this person fits, both with the skill as well as the, let's call it human dynamic, because we've all heard that phrase, one, bad apple can spoil yada yada yada. Got it, right? But that means that there has to be some real planning and responsibility on the hiring process and the decision makers.
Nothing made this more clear than and everybody refers to this as a troublesome time, but going back to COVID when
Mhm,
people weren't getting back into the office and it was hard to get employees. I mean, I at that time was interviewing people all the time.
mhm.
And because you had to interview them right away, you couldn't collect resumes and
Of
sit on
course,
them
there was no
for a
time,
couple weeks.
right? There was
Yeah,
no
you
time.
had to move fast. And
Yeah.
we were plugging people in sometimes during that time just because it's like we got a body, we're getting it going, you know. We've got a ton of work. There was a
How
lot of work
often did
to
that
be
work out
done.
for you?
Yeah, I
We got
love.
a body. Let's
Yeah,
go,
that's not a good way to hire, I'll tell you that.
man.
And so there are some positions where that kind of may come
Sure.
into play, but when you're thinking about this position, especially if I'm running a smaller business and I have 11 people in my group, man, you need to be thoughtful about the cultural fit in where it's going to fit, like you say, man, where there's a need. And it could be a need you can't even quite envision what that's going to look like. You can say, hey, this is where I believe this could be going. You know, companies go in all sorts of directions that aren't planned sometimes, but if you can see that, like, okay, this person will fit in here because we've got a lot taken care of over here with another individual. Let's fill that void of maybe creativity, or maybe it's compliance, or maybe it's, somebody with drive and energy that we don't
Yeah.
have on the team right now.
So,
Um,
what you really described here is you've described the communication to your internal staff that you have today. What are the implications and the expectations so that when you bring in someone new, no one feels threatened, right?
mhm.
I've been
Yeah.
dealing with that with, a couple situations here lately, and that can be such like a detractor for wanting to go out and bring someone in because you don't know the implications and the ramifications to your existing staff. So I always think it's a great idea to have a chat with your staff and let them know what your hiring plans are, right? And you're being very honest. You're talking about your needs. And you are articulating the value add by getting someone with these attributes to the table. Now, the real question, and you'll love my nice smooth transition because I'm not. What are the attributes that we really look at? Because you mentioned it in the intro and the starter, right? Skills, knowledge, and attitude are basically those three sides of what is known as, Carnegie's triangle. Um, you and I are in staunch agreement that hiring for attitude needs to be priority number one. But why is that such an important deal? And how do we kind of handle that in our coaching practices?
Um, I have a pretty good example and that I can bring up. have a very good friend who shows everything in attitude that you want to hire as a business owner, as a leader. You know, it's positive attitude, a willingness to learn and grow.
Yeah,
He came from working at Goldman Sachs, working in accounting and money and in stocks and he decided that wasn't for him. But he learned, he climbed all the way up the ladder and got on at Goldman Sachs, right? And then decided he wanted to go into software development from
oh,
there. Way different, way different.
danger.
But he started in an entry level position at a in an upstart, and he was able to climb up that ladder and learn how to do all those things that a software developer does and grew in that company to where he was the right-hand man of the owner of that business and
Awesome.
still very heavily involved. It's because of his attitude. He was willing to work the long nights and get the education he needed to do that job. He was absorbing like a sponge everything he could take in. He was positive when things weren't going well, he would try to help be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Um, those type of things are hard to, they're, like you say, they're soft skills. They're hard to get an assessment on, but those are the kind of soft skills that make people be successful at whatever they do. And you hear that a lot about successful people,
Hmm.
you know, even sports stars that are successful are able to use those attributes that are attitude type things to go become a broadcaster really and be really good at it
Yeah.
or be an analyst of sports, and they're using that same like determination and attitude to get the results that's wanted for those positions and they can apply those whatever position wherever whatever they're doing. People that are successful do that.
Yep. This is entirely true, right? And so the traits that you just listed around someone's success, your friend's success, they were all attitudinal in their, let's call it foundation. Now, what do we mean by that, right? There are, this theory that you have skills, hard skills, things that you know. You have the application of those skills, right? And those are things, it's not skill, but it's knowledge, right? It's you know how to apply those items. And then you have the attitude, the willingness to take criticism, the willingness to embrace change and to bring in other people in your decision-making process. The fortitude to be able to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty, to blur lines and to take on ownership of things that may not actually be in your wheelhouse or even in your job role, but guess what? It's for the betterment of the organization. Those are the things that we mean when we talk about attitudinal based. It is a conscious choice that you yourself, the individual, makes to be coachable, to be willing, to be able, to be interested, to ask questions. You are actively trying to make the situation better in every manner and means possible.
Yep.
Those people are phenomenal, right? And then if you take those same types of attitudinal traits and you put them in a leader, that's not a boss, Mike. It's not someone who's dictating. These are those people that, as we all look back in our careers, they have been those cornerstones that have forced us to develop in ways outside of our comfort zones. They're those people that saw things in us and made us, see them in ourselves and helped us get there. Man, if you can identify those traits that you see in the best leaders, especially if you're hiring for a junior position and they have some of those qualities, man, you grab that person right then and there, right?
Yeah,
Because you know what they're going to grow into. And if you can get, a team full of A plus attitudes, there's nothing stopping you, right? It's just your vision, how your creativity, and your ability to organize your thoughts and execute. Like, what a powerful thing. I wish more people hired for attitude and looked at the dynamic of the full team, not just what can you do for me today, because I think that's taking a short-sighted view.
100%. And we coach on a principle around this, and it's the victor victim principle. And
That's right.
we want to find people, like we say, they have something to prove, which is being proactive,
Proactive.
responsible, taking ownership, vision. They have vision, and then they spend most of their time in excellence doing, the highest quality work. So that those are things that
I'm
we need.
laughing because I know what you just did there.
I did an atom, is what I
You
pulled
you
out right there.
you pulled it at him. I love that. Listen, don't ever verb me because that's just bad. But that was amazing. All
Love
right,
it.
Mike. Well, listen, this has been a fascinating chat, and I guarantee you we could probably keep this going for another hour. Any last thoughts that you'd like to go close?
Making the right hire is so important, and doing it right, you know, will pay dividends. And think about the attitude of your people and the culture.
We said a lot of things today, and one thing that I'd like to leave people with is this is not something that you rush. Yes, you may find that right candidate on day one, and I'm not saying don't hire that person if you just know, right? But I'm saying have an open mind, take your time, be methodical, know what you want versus what you need, and don't just hire for today's needs, hire for tomorrow's. Think about the big picture of integration, and I promise things will go much more smoothly. So, everyone, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this chat about team building, culture, dynamics, and all of that fun stuff. For Mike and I, this is episode 23 of Coach's Corner. So, thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next week. Take care, all.